As if you look at this as a number grid, the government is either nothing or less than nothing. To be nothing means to be completely neutral, completely undecided, completely inactive, basically. The government is definitely active, but they are acting on a scale that is wrong, essentially. It's quite obvious to know when harm is being done, in a very unnecessary way. I would say harm, unnecessary, speaks far more volume. Words in volumes, spoken in volumes, is a compressive format of formulating words and articulations that allows a library to be expressed in a very short amount of time. Now, upon you arriving into the hybrid existence, within a foot away from you, you might be sitting next to a tree. It just depends. When you think about it, where would you want to be if you were in absolute perfect serenity? And we have so many examples near an ocean. Maybe somehow in a small submarine-like thing where you're sleeping on a futon, floating through the sea, listening to some nice new age music, nice tranquil music, and the submarine is transparent, so you could look out the submarine itself and see the beautiful fish and beings swimming around within the sea, the sun pouring its light in. By the way, oceans will not be dark anymore. No, their depths will illuminate those depths. Depth itself is alive. Space itself, space of depth, is alive. Nebulas form in a way that I cannot express truly how to try and express how a nebula is created is something I do not know entirely. But I do know that from the ground a flower grows, just as in space a nebula flourishes. How to explain that process, I do not know. I know that a seed is planted, seeds of... maybe the universe puts seeds out non-stop. Stars do essentially start out as a star seed. I remember at one point, which I'll have to draw it again. I'm most certain I already have drawn it. Well, it was during my time in the hybrid existence, which is a very, 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 very long time. Extremely long time. I had drawn the neurological map of the universe, essentially, through a nerve-ending, wormhole-like effect, I guess you could say, and showing the birth of a starseed, and then the process of the starseed, and the evolution part of the starseed, all drawn. Scientists even say at the center of a star, I believe they said it is 711 trillion carats. That sounds about right. That's where in science I will agree. That figure sounds about right. Now there are some that go over that, that's for sure. But scientists got that little bit right. Every now and then they are either ironically right or rarely right. And we look at a star. Now, how is it giving off that much light? Well, that's the being. To start from, I guess, I wouldn't say at basic level, that's for sure. I guess you could say level 1. Now, a prism is about the best example I can give with this. A prism, you shine a light through it, and multicolors, all the colors of illumination show. A being that is alive, that is not just crystalline, but actually, I'd have to script this one. It's just impossible. Essentially, it's like trying to describe a purely celestial crystalline being that's in planetary form, but at the same time it's eternally fractal in reflections to such a degree that it creates all this energy and light. It would take me a very long time to explain that whole process. It would just take too long. Besides, these beings are going to be able to communicate with you on a level that I know that no one has truly had. Let's see. Nebulas are keys, they're doorways. So, essentially, this solar system will, as of 12 a.m., within much less than a week, will be within the hybrid existence. Now, at that point, and maybe a few days at most, I doubt a week, within a few days at most, of reflection and these beings of plentiful numbers amongst you, explaining things, you sharing ideas with them, them showing you the technologies. It's going to be basically a 4-day tour, but that also at the same time 4 days of experience, actual experience amongst these beings. You won't see every single being interact with you. There are beings that, quote, construct things, but in a way that, well, you will just have to see. At that point, the beings that necessarily, the beings that don't have to leave to essentially observe the rest of the universe and observe the other unnatural occurrences, which Orion will probably be the first, Pleiades the second. Pleiades, it's there's a lot of good with Pleiades, but the beings became far too fixated on white light and love and only those types of ways of being. You can't only be illumination. You gotta have depth. You gotta have a sense of graphicness. Articulation itself is graphic. It is not just trying to express something or explain something, but leaving out a lot of the depth. There's a difference between living as a light being and living as a vivid being. It's also because a very, very small portion, though, but the small portion of this universe is unnatural, and it only goes out so far. But essentially, I'm about 100% sure irony is going to be the one to observe. I believe also evil and vengeance. I believe is going to stay here. Vengeance is going to stay here because she knows that a lot of persons have had, basically a lot of built-up anger and stress, which is to say that for that long, that person was waiting to live. Why the graphic reactions and responses? Because that's how graphic that's how vivid their purpose and wanting and their desire is to live. But people don't realize a lot of this. A lot of people don't realize that because the unnatural circumstances are sort of so obscure, at times, at that maybe just split second, ego is misinterpreted for an act of courage or something. There's times where persons are supposed to react in a courageous way, but take another step into what the person has spoken of, whatever it might be. I'm sure you have some examples. And instead of taking that courageous step, whatever it might be, they decided to move on to that person. In other words, single out their views or put themselves above them. Unfortunately and unnaturally, men do this to women a lot of the time. Men cannot stand what women can do if it's better